Hello everyone, welcome to you in the room and welcome to our listeners and viewers online for this discussion forum. This discussion forum will be about the cooperation in the African field for the to cover the different quality infrastructure organization in this discussion. This discussion comes following the workshop that ISO is conducting in Kenya, which is hosted by KIDS. This workshop is about conformity assessment and regulations. It's animated by myself, Ibrahim Houla, and Warren Merkel, also the second expert in this workshop. And today we have the honorable privilege to receive honorable guests representing different organizations in the African continent. We will have AFRIMEDS, Dr. Henry Rotich, which is represents the AFRIMEDS. He's the AFRIMEDS chair. We have also representation of ARSO, Mr. Charles Gachahi, who is the chair of the CACO, the coordinator of the CACO committee in ARSO. And we have with us Mr. Martin Chizire, representing both AFRAC. He's the MRA committee vice chair, and also he's the CEO of KINAS, the accreditation body for Kenya. Welcome everyone to this discussion, and I would like to start with a small presentation from your organizations. We have here present with us 19 countries from the African continent, representing more than 20 organizations. And also online, we have a number of interested parties and participants who are looking forward to know about how the infrastructure for quality is established in Africa. So let's start with Mr. Charles Gachahi to talk about ARSO, the work of ARSO, and how conformity assessment is covered by the work of ARSO.
Thank you. I think I start again now. Yes, as I have said before, ARSO is the African Organization for Standardization, and it's an international, intergovernmental organization established by the African Union in 1977 to basically look at issues to do with the harmonization of standards and also conformity assessment in Africa. So we have 41 members now across the continent, and member states of the AU are represented in ARSO by their national standards bodies, and where they have not been established, then they can be represented by a department that is dealing with trade. So in as far as implementing the mandate of harmonization of standards, we have established currently 84 technical committees that deal with the various subject matters of priority within the African continent, basically to improve the competitiveness of our goods so that we can be able to trade freely within ourselves. And these technical committees, we have operationalized 32 currently. This is dealing with subjects like dairy, pharmaceuticals, dealing with motor vehicles, all that. And the experts are drawn from the member states. Each country or member state has a right to participate in the development or harmonization of standards. And also, based on the priorities within their own countries, they can also propose standards for harmonization. In as far as conformity assessment is concerned, we have what we call the African Conformity Assessment Program. This is a conformity assessment program that has currently 11 schemes that deal with a whole range of products. For instance, for primary production of plants and animals, we have what we call Scheme A, that is primary production. And when we go to factory level, we have what we call Scheme B, that's dealing now with the processing. We have other schemes, I might not enumerate all of them, But we also have another scheme we call chain of custody. This is basically for traceability in terms of production in the factory. For instance, if you want to say a product complies with a certain scheme, then if the raw materials are complying with another scheme, then you can be able to trace it through that. That's the chain of custody. We are also operationalizing another important scheme. This maybe we can talk a little bit more. It is on the sustainability and eco-labeling, which award the Ecomark Africa label, which is an eco-label or a label that means that a product or process has integrated the various measures of sustainability in its production. That is environment, social, and economic. In as far as conformity assessment is concerned, we work with other quality infrastructure institutions. For instance, for certification, because it is key, ASO itself does not undertake certification, but certification is undertaken by certification bodies, be they private or public. But for them to be licensed to audit on behalf of ASO, then they have to be accredited so that they can be able to ensure the issue of capacity and capability. For that particular purpose, we work with accreditation bodies that will be able to accredit the certification bodies to the relevant international standards, for instance, 17065. So for that case, we are utilizing bodies like KENAS to do that. And for certification bodies, there are several certification bodies who have expressed interest in certifying for ASO. One of it is Kenya Bureau of Standards certification body. We have others like Zimbabwe and many other countries. In other countries, they have expressed interest. And members, because we are members of Africa, we are encouraged to express that interest so that we can be able to license you after you comply, and then also to undertake various certifications within your country. Because you realize that one of the major components of certification, cost of certification, is movement of the experts. Yes. So if you are able to have experts within your locality, then we can be able to make some inroads.
Exactly. Yes. Thank you
So
very
I'll
much.
Stop there, and then maybe there's
Yes, sure. It's very exciting. I think it's very important information, especially for our trainees who have been in this workshop the last 3 years, 3 days, discussing about the schemes and how different certification activities are conducted and how this can be a tool for the regulators to implement and also to facilitate trade. But also we talked about technical regulations, and metrology is one of the backbones of the technical regulations writing activities. Also, it's very important to know that measurements are very important for trade, for accuracy, for efficient production. And that's why today we have with us Mr. Henry Rotich, representing AfriMets, and we would like to have some brief introduction from yourself about the AfriMets, how it works and how it covers different activities in the African continent.
Thank you very much. My name is Dr. Henry Rotich, the chairman or president of AfriMets. Metrology is arranged in such a way that it is in line with the Meter Convention, which was signed in 1875. And the goal was to get measurement traceability. You remember at the very beginning, it was very difficult to buy a spare part from another country and use it in another country because measurements were different. And so to sort out that one, the National Metrology Institutes came together to harmonize and work under the Meter Convention. So AfriMets is the regional metrology organization for Africa, intra-Africa. So all the countries within Africa, they link up with the BIBM through AfriMets. metrology is divided into basically three fields. We have scientific metrology, then we have industrial metrology, and the legal metrology. So these are the three fields of metrology which are very critical in supporting trade and the economy. So AfriMets, the membership is from Africa. Currently we have more than 48 countries who are members of AfriMets. We have membership to the MITA Convention, and in Africa we have South Africa is a full member. We have Egypt is a full member. We have Kenya, a full member. We have Tunisia and Morocco. So you can see, then we have a number of countries who are associate members. So when you are a full member or associate member, then you can participate in the key comparisons, which are organized by the BIBM directly or through the regional metrology organization. So as metrology, what do? We coordinate comparisons within the region, and we link also the region to other regions, because we work with Euramet, we work with SIN, we work with APMB of Asia, and even CUMET of Asia, of Russia. The reason is to link up and make sure that we have these comparisons. So what are the importance of these key comparisons? The key comparisons, these are the measurements that you offer to industry from the National Metrology Institute. So when you participate in these key comparisons, you will be able to demonstrate your capability, which you can file them in the key comparison database of the BIBM. And anybody can access it and be able to see the capabilities in your country. And this promotes the mutual recognition arrangement between countries who are members of the MITA Convention. So that way, if you are exporting a product to one country A from country B, then that country can see the capabilities that you have in that database and say, well, the source certificates, we can recognize them. And I think this is very important now, especially when we are talking about the AFCFTA. So we promote these comparisons and also promote the legal metrology. You remember the legal metrology is the metrology that is handling measurements for trade. If you are selling fuel, 1 liter in Kenya, is it equivalent to 1 liter in your neighboring country? And so we promote that measurements in legal metrology, the issues of comparison in documents and the linkage to the OIML. And so we have projects that we work to promote metrology within Africa. A key case where we get all the 4 pillars working together is on the cassava. You know, cassava is a crop that is found in most of the African countries, and we are promoting that product. So as AfriMets, we are working on the measurements. Then you got ARSO on the standards. You got AFRAC handling the issues of accreditation of the labs. So why is metrology important? When we are talking about measurements, if you want to develop a standard, that standard requires measurements. And so we work with ARSO, we work with also the AFRAC when they are doing their accreditation. It's based on measurements. And so we, as one of the pillars, we promote conformity assessment, because conformity assessment relies heavily on measurements. And we want those measurements to be comparable so that we can be able to make critical and sound decisions for trade and minimize the issues of barriers to trade. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Henry. I think it's clear for now how the infrastructure, quality infrastructure in Africa is established, and also the harmony and symbiosis between different components of this structure working together. And surely accreditation is also one important component of this quality infrastructure that comes to prove the competence of the conformity assessment activities established based on standards and also based on the metrological traceability and the work done in the metrology. So that's why Mr. Martin Chizire, the CEO of KINAS, but also representing AFRAC and the MRA. So we talked about the MRA, mutual recognition agreements between countries. Well, now also we can talk about the mutual recognition arrangements between the different accreditation bodies at the African level, but also how AFRAC is part of the global network of accreditation. Please, Mr. Martin.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. Perhaps let me start off by describing my organization. KINAS is the national accreditation body for Kenya. Our role as accreditation bodies across the world is to check that conformity assessment bodies or provide the formal, ongoing, independent recognition of the competence, integrity and impartiality of conformity assessment bodies that perform tasks such as testing, inspection, certification, verification, validation, examination. In turn, conformity assessment bodies then check on behalf of either business, public, consumers, regulators, that requirements set out in standards or regulations for goods, services, persons, systems are met. So accreditation bodies, we consider ourselves the checker of the checkers. So the checker is us, the checkers are conformity assessment bodies. So KINAS was established in 2009. We are among the signatories to the African Accreditation Corporation and also the International Accreditation Forum, MLA, and International Board of Accreditation Corporations, MRA. KINAS's mandate today is broader than before. We had a new legal framework established in 2019 that enables us now to cover more scope to which regulators will have confidence that any conformity body providing services to compliance to regulation are deemed acceptable. Let me then turn to the African Accreditation Corporation before I come and look at the role of accreditation. AFRAC, within Africa, we set out some 10 years more ago to cooperate among accreditation bodies. Africa is very big. It has more than over 50 countries, and we must trade, and we must have a basis to recognize reports, results of test laboratories so that we enable the quality of life and also economic development to happen within Africa. So AFRAC is the African Accreditation Corporation. Currently, it has 12 full members. We have 8 arrangement members, and I'll describe the difference. And we also have stakeholder members. A full member is any country that has established an accreditation body or is part of an accreditation system that exists within Africa. We feel very proud as AFRAC that we have a model of a regional accreditation system, and we have 2 full members for the West Africa SOAC and also for South Africa SADCAS. That covers a multi-economy accreditation, so a country that does not have the capacity or not yet ready in terms of its industry or regulatory approach to establish and invest in an accreditation body can then take advantage under the regional economic corporations, for example, in SADC and in ECOWAS in West Africa, CEMAC combined, to set up an accreditation body that will offer the services of checking the checkers within the economy. Accreditation, being the youngest of the quality infrastructure, you must have a standard, then must be able to measure. If you're able to measure, you're able to test or inspect or certify, but somebody has to underpin that, and that is where we come in as the third arm of the quality infrastructure. As accreditation bodies, we look at 3 perspectives of our checking of the checker. 1, we would want to have accredited conformity assessment bodies deliver confidence to regulators that if this is the regulatory requirements for the energy sector, for the lighting that we have, or for the water or the food, beverages, that the regulator is confident that they don't have to invest resources to double test, to double inspect. So that's one perspective of our result or the outcome we do. The second outcome to the public and the consumer is to deliver trust. We act on behalf, the conformers act on behalf, but the consumer needs to know that somebody has checked them. So we justify everyday decisions that you and I do. From the toothbrush, you wake up knowing that it will not be able to damage your teeth. From toothpaste, will not be able to be acidic on you. From the water you drink. So we justify and deliver trust to the consumer. And finally, in terms of business industry, we enable the transactions for purchaser, supplier, purchaser context. This, we consider ourselves an outcome for this, is we provide assurance that you will supply me raw materials that meet this particular specification. So in general, accreditation is not limited to having just a national role, working with regulators. We have a regional role where we conclude arrangements, an international role as well, to ensure that we apply a principle called, if it's fit for South Africans, it should be fit for Kenyans. We call it Cassis Dijon. So we would rather recognize results that have been done without us having to retest them at the point of entering our countries. So that's why within AFRAC, like an IIF, we go for the equivalence and acceptance of results of conformity assessment underpinned by accreditation. Thank you.
Great, great. I think one key point that you have highlighted is the importance of trust. As an infrastructure, the real reason for the work and cooperation of the components of the infrastructure is to build that trust in the competence of the conformity assessment bodies, in the quality of the products, and also in the fairness of the trade relationships between different organizations. During the workshop that we had with our representatives from different African countries, there was really an interest in how the African countries can be in the forefront of the new trends of trade. There are new opportunities for African countries to have important trade and the new kinds of trade, the new platforms, new products that can be really of added value to development, economic development of the different African countries. And the question is, how is this supported now by standards, methodology, and accreditation? And if you can give us, Mr. Charles, what is the projects that are now supporting this new trend and the aspirations and the future of the new generations of African investors and industrials to have more trade and to support the economic developments in African countries?
Thank you. First of all, something I forgot to mention, which is important, is that African standards and also at a conformity assessment, we do normally give guidelines on how to undertake the various certification activities. All these standards and guidelines are voluntary. They are not mandatory. But as we move towards the implementation of the AFCFTA, it will be important for the member states or African countries to adopt or align their standards or guidelines with those. Under the AFCFTA, which is the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, that Annex 6 on the TBT, they only recognize African standards for purposes of conformity and market access. And as we move to what we call one standard, one test certificate, and one standard, and one mark for certification, it is very important that countries participate in standards harmonization and also in the development of guidelines under the ASO Conformity Assessment Committee, which again is also open. Membership is open to member countries from both the standards bodies and then the regulators, because basically we are also looking at regulations. Now, in as far as projects are concerned, we do have quite a number of projects. First of all, like Dr. Rotich said, we already have a project on cassava. This is on the cassava value chain, where we are looking at the various byproducts of cassava, from the leaf to the tuber, so that we can be able to commercialize them and benefit our small farmers or even large farmers from production of fresh produce like fresh products like cassava bitter leaves, all that, to getting starch from the product. So we are having a project that is harmonizing standards on the cassava value chain products. Now, Metrology is dealing with the issue of coming up with the various methods for purposes of measurements. And in as far as, and we are working with Kenya Bureau of Standards from a perspective. And also, there is the harmonization of standards for the machines that will be able to process cassava. These are basically electrical products. So this one, under the Pan-African Quality Infrastructure pillars, they are being harmonized by the AFSEC. AFSEC is the arm that deals with the electrical products. That's the African Technical Commission. So we have various projects, and then also we are now coming up with a project on the Made in Africa also, which is also very important, where we have to look at products that are made with Africa so that they can also be given some Africa label, and they have to be also comply with the various African standards so that they can be awarded, so that we can be able to move our products also among ourselves and trade, even trade outside. So we have another project on pharmaceuticals. This is basically dealing with the pharmaceutical products themselves, and also what we might call the medical devices, and also the African traditional medicine. And this has been triggered by what we are seeing, the COVID-19 pandemic, that when it came 2 years ago, it is disrupted the various supply chains, such that it was difficult even to get medication or whatever, or even movement of those products. And we have some manufacturers also here who are making those products, and therefore we had to come up with standards which have been referenced to international standards also, so that we can be able to optimize on manufacturing and distribution of those products. We also have on motor vehicles, again, this is important. You know, also Africa is, we have a lot of raw materials from iron ore, which we can be able to process all that. And this is also dealing with, and we have quite a number of countries that are also manufacturing motor vehicles, from Egypt, South Africa, Morocco, all that, even Nigeria, quite a number of countries. And this is big project for Africa. So we have to have standards, because like I said earlier on, standards will be the tools for competitiveness. So you have to ensure the quality of those products so that you can be able to access market.
Thank you very much. So standards are the tools for the future trade, are tools for our industries and for our African countries to have this economic development and sustainable also economic development. And it's clear that standardization projects, they are listening to the needs of the African countries, and they are updating themselves and putting forward projects that help not only what is today, but also the future of our generations. And I think also the metrology is a big support for not only the writing of the standards, but also for the industry itself, with the projects that are existing. And we heard about digitalization of metrology and the way how to have this cooperation between different countries to facilitate trade, and also to have industry more effective and more strong in its endeavors. So Dr. Henry Rotich, so if you can tell us about the projects that are existing now to support the current and future of the industry and trade in the African continent.
Good. Thank you very much. When you hear HARZO, you are likely to hear metrology, because we are so close that you cannot talk about the other one without mentioning the other one. Because when they are developing standards, we measure so that they can validate those standards that they are okay. One of the things I wanted to mention here is about capacity building. As metrology fraternity, we have one policy. It might not be written, but it's a policy which is there. The doors are open. So you will find that as Kenya Bureau of Standards, for example, which is the National Metrology Institute for Kenya, we welcome and we've trained a number of metrologists from the continent, from the southern part of Africa, from within East Africa, from as you go towards the north. We've also gotten opportunities to train our metrologists in other regions. For example, NIST. We've had one of our staff who has just finished his PhD in Maryland University, but did his projects in NIST under this arrangement of as metrologists. And also, we've had support for a number of African countries at the PIBM, where we had some trainings of people in gas analysis. We've also had people trained on mycotoxin. And as we are talking, a product, a certified reference material, was developed under that initiative. And this was to support developing countries, because mycotoxin is a big problem. So these are some of the projects. So the other project that Mr. Kachai mentioned is very clear when you're talking about a proficiency testing. So we developed the material. We are actually working, it's being led by the National Metrology Institute of South Africa, and also Kenya Bureau of Standards is part of it, to develop the material which can now be sent to those labs which are interested within the continent and even outside the continent. I think Mr. Martin mentioned that they check the competence of the checkers. So those checkers, they can only demonstrate competence by working with materials that have been characterized and the true values have been known. And this is where metrology comes in, because we are developing that PT, and that PT will be assigned value by a competent National Metrology Institute. And sometimes we even send it outside the country using the infrastructure which is there. Like we can send it to NIST. They do value assigning of that product, and that PT now can be shared. And this way, we say it's good to know where you are so that you can determine where you are going. If you don't know your capability in measuring, for example, iron in a certain product, let's say cassava, if it's a parameter required, how can you improve it? You will never, isn't it? So what we do as metrology is to help the labs improve their competence by participation in these proficiency testing schemes. And I would like to urge that those other labs within Africa who are interested, please come forward. The coordination is being done by the National Metrology Institute of South Africa. A call for those who are interested, you can check on their website. And if you can't find, you can also link up with me, because we would like you to participate and see where you are. And then we normally have meetings where we discuss the performance of such schemes. We've also had opportunities to train our people in Korea, Greece, courtesy of the AfriMed's arrangement under the PIBM. We've also had some of our people trained in Turkey on measurements to support medical sector. We are working with PTB under the EAC arrangement to develop capacity for equipment maintenance. I'm sure most of those who come from the labs, they know that in this region, maintenance of equipment is the biggest problem. So we are working with PTB under that initiative, and actually it was to support specifically the pharmaceutical sector. So there are a number of programs which are there, and we keep on increasing, and these are tailored towards meeting the needs. And the outcome is to improve confidence in what we do. in our labs, because you have confidence that a lab in Nigeria does a fantastic job, that the values generated there are okay. I don't need to measure. The overregulation is always because of the fear. And maybe sometimes the level of confidence in what the other one is doing. So if we can really work together, embrace metrology, improve our metrology in our regions, then the confidence will come there, because the framework is there, mutual recognition arrangement under the MITA Convention. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Henry. I think this is a very strong message to our members. I think it's important to cooperate and participate in proficiency testings, but also we can see there's very important capacity building programs putting the conformity assessment bodies in a good position to prove their competence and to serve the market. They are also backed up by standards and by marks like the Ecolabel for sustainability, which is also something that supports the exportations and is in updated status with what's happening around the world, with the new ESG requirements, the new environmental requirements for products. It's not only quality, but also additional requirements for products. And we look forward to have the slogan that we have in like an F, accredited once, accepted everywhere. We're also having certified in Africa, accepted worldwide. And surely accreditation, I think, will have a big role in supporting these certificates to be recognized worldwide, especially with the work of AFRAC and KINAS.
Yes, just similar to what AfriMet is doing, the key projects that are there around capacity building, but I would want to put it from the problem area. The growth of conformity assessment market within Africa, I put my personal opinion as, is very stunted. If you look at the global market opportunity, in a report published in 2020 by the TIC Council, Testing, Inspection and Certification Council, which is an association of conformity assessment globally, the largest one that we know, the market size for conformity assessment bodies is 200 billion euros. Now, you and I were in Africa. If you try and evaluate the number of conformity assessment bodies that support the testing, the inspection of products that we either import or we are exporting, largely it's been managed by, I call it, the big five, the multinational conformity assessment bodies, the ones you know. Now, regulators have facilities for inspection, testing. They have a role in that area. We have private sector, either being subcontracted by the big ones. So it needs to be looked at. We need to take a portion of that space as we grow within Africa. So under AFRAC and also through the promotion of the Pan-African Public Infrastructure, PACI, accreditation being the youngest of all the infrastructure in Africa, our area of focus is building capacity to create the space for accreditation. One, through supporting or raising awareness on the need for a national quality policy. So a number of projects that are being supported, be it through UNIDO or the German Metrology Institute, PTB. Now I also see within the World Bank, ITC, they support countries to align their national quality policy to establish. One, to align to the African quality policy, which was approved, some of you may be aware, last year by the Council of the Summit of African Union Commission. So that's where the area we're looking at, so that we are able to take opportunity of the market that is going to appear when we start trading among ourselves, recognizing that if this is fit for Kenya, it should be fit for any other African country. And that brings out economic growth and also market access, not only within Africa and also beyond. Now, within those projects, there are key things we're looking at in terms of accreditation. I will talk at what we're looking at in AFRAC. AFRAC is looking at capacity to be able to grow, one, the volume of the peer assessors that we have, the peer evaluators that we have, who will undertake the underpinning of the competence of an accreditation body to the required international standard, ISO 17011. Two, the growth of capacity of accredited bodies to be ready to have more conformity assessment bodies covered under accreditation. So because the growth after about 5 years becomes exponential. When the country accepts, and I want to use a case for Kenya, in 2018, we only had 89 accredited bodies. Even through COVID effects, today we have 267. So if you calculate that, this velocity in which the market is taking up, and largely of these are private sector for general product testing and the health sector. So those are the areas we're looking at in terms of AFRAC. If I come to the region, within the East African community, because we are member states now, Congo joined recently, in the framework of value chains, looking at what products can we trade among ourselves, there's been a program run under the European Union, supported by Trademark East Africa, called Markup project. They started off fundamentally starting with ensuring that there are standards available, and then ensuring that there's capacity to be able to test, aligning to methodological traceability. In this period of time now, we're looking at having the laboratories ready and the inspection bodies ready to be accredited. So we stand on a privileged position that we are the only accreditation body within the East African community, and a program has moved into now Markup Project 2. The Markup Project 2 still bases on the value chains on agribusiness. Africa must feed itself. So we must be able to supply. Everybody is moving to the urban areas, so we must be able to move food products, produce across that is healthy and safe for humans to consume. Nationally, as Kenas, we have a project that we're working with the government. They voted in some funding. This is aligned to the National Export Development Strategy, which runs into 2025. You'll be very surprised that we produce very good organic honey. We struggle to get it into the market because we have to send to a laboratory in Tanzania for that honey to be tested to meet the EU requirements, because we do not have an accredited laboratory in Kenya. So that's one area we're looking at, to give a business case to private sector laboratories to invest. And those who come from the laboratory background, you know how many tests you require to do, how many pieces of equipment that you need to invest. So our role nationally is to open the space for private sector to play a role and complement the efforts of regulators. I'm not saying regulators don't have a role. Those who come from institutions that are regulatory and have owned a test laboratory, we have seen cases where the priorities of the regulator are no longer having enough money to invest to renew equipment, to have the latest technology, yet the market is able to invest for that. So regulators need to start also aligning themselves and say, we need to look at higher competency tests or inspection rather than testing for normal water, basic parameters of water or microbiological, which the market already has. I think I would want to end there, but by just making a final connection. Under ARSO, they have a scheme. What we call them in accreditation is a scheme owner. This is one of the tools that regulators can take advantage of. ARSO has been very ambitious to try and have a scheme that is Pan-African, but regulators in the country try to create multiple labels. There is no harm for a regulator to take the model and sub-license the private sector to say, I may want to give, for example, the standardization mark for Kenya. I have invested in a laboratory or certification body for only water. My infrastructure will be limited, and I maintain my license subject to accreditation, and I comply with the methodological traceability elements. So I think I would want to end there. So we have very exciting projects coming up, and we look forward to supporting the growth of conformity testing bodies and also accreditations within Africa. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Martin. I think this shows the different efforts from different components of the quality infrastructure in Africa. And I appreciate that you mentioned the PACI, which is the Pan-African Quality Infrastructure Organization, having different organizations. Also, Mr. Charles, you are part of the PACI, and you can give us some brief about the PACI, how it supports the industry. But also, if you'd like, please give us also an information how PACI and the different components of the quality infrastructure can support the needs, the special needs of the micro, small, and medium enterprises. This is a frequent question that we had during our workshop, is that there's a big component of our industry texture in Africa is the micro, small, and medium enterprises, those enterprises that are created from someone at home, small family, people trying to get a business, and it's sometimes difficult for them to apply all the requirements that can be easy for big organizations, giant organizations, but not for the MSMEs. So if you can give us a brief about the PACI and how it is the idea about creating it, especially that we know now there is an international network of quality infrastructure, INETQI, that is also trying to encourage the creation of organizations like PACI at the regional level worldwide. Mr. Charles.
Thank you. PACI, that is PAQI, it stands for the Pan-African Quality Infrastructure. Quality infrastructures are those institutions that are able to ensure the quality of goods and services so that they can be able to access market. And these institutions are basically their standards, methodology for measurements, accreditation, and also then there is also the issue of certification. I think there are basically 5. But PACI itself is made up of 4 institutions. One of it is ASO, that specifically deals with standards. There is AFRIMET, that's the regional body for meteorology or measurement. AFLAC, where Martin is also talking a bit about, is dealing with accreditation. And then AFSEC, that deals with the standards on electrical products. For products to access market, the whole process has to be anchored on standards, measurements, and certification. And this is the linkage. ASO will come up with standards. Then for them to be implemented through certification, then there has to be what we call auditing. So in terms of auditing and the auditors and the certification bodies, and then before that, then there is also the issue of testing for compliance with the various requirements of the standard. This is critical. So the accreditation bodies, where KENAS is also a member now of AFLAC, they have to accredit, and he did mention the laboratories, the certification bodies, and also inspection bodies, all that. Then issues to do with the realization of the various measurements of testing. Then we have to have a methodology. And so all those, we call them quality infrastructures, work together, and basically for the integration of Africa under the AFCFTA, which basically means free movement, if possible, of goods and services across the continent. That's what we are saying, that we are looking towards a situation where we have one standard, one certificate, and then one quality mark, so that you can be able to move products across the continent. All these PACI institutions, you have heard, they have some component of capacity building. This is key because we need to have the right people and the right equipment within the institutions so that they can be able to facilitate the relevant mandate of those institutions. Therefore, the other PACI, each institution will have its own projects, but basically geared towards helping in terms of market access. It doesn't matter whether it's a big company or small company, because when it comes to health and safety, it does not matter whether you are a big company or a small company. You have to meet the minimum requirements. Yeah? But under, at maybe national level or at national level, organizations can be able to come with some support for for the small manufacturer. For instance, if there are some fees to be paid, you can come up with a structured payment system where a big manufacturer or farmer does not pay the same amount as a small farmer. And this would be a project which can be able to help. Even at the markup program that Martin was talking about, there is a lot of resources which have been put down to build capacity for the small manufacturer or small farmer to comply with existing standards. But for integration of Africa, we are saying, yes, it is good to have, to comply with the normal local standards, which is okay, but it would be even be more better if that local standard was an African standard, so that you can be able now, because like I was saying, under the AFCFTA TBT Annex 6, they will be recognizing the African standard for market access. So there will be those programs or capacity building trying to break up those guidelines and regulations for the small entrepreneur, so that you can be able to comply with the existing regulations and standards.
Perfect. I think this is a very good message that the requirements, they will still be there. You will be still having good quality. There's no lowering the quality because you are a small or medium enterprise, but there will be support for you to achieve that level of compliance for the local market, but also the markets that you want to export to. I would like to open the floor for our participants. The future of Africa, you can see all the young experts that we have here that are looking forward to make Africa a better place in the future. And I would like to see the different questions, so we can start with Tony. Present yourself, Tony, and then you can ask the question. Present yourself, your organization, and your country.
Thank you so much for the presentation. Indeed, we do agree that harmonization of standards and conformity assessment activities is very key in the continent for the safety and health, as well as intercontinental trade. If we look into the future, we do see a clean Africa when it comes to trade and safe and quality products. But having said that, I come from a small country myself, Eswatini. So it's small by size, and it's also very small by economy. And engagement and participation on these platforms definitely will come with a cost. It's very easy for us to develop standards because that's just some academic program or some working with documents. But setting up competent conformity assessment infrastructure is a challenge. And even participating in these platforms also AfriMets. Membership to those platforms comes at a fee. So that's the challenge. So when I look at the future, I do see a clean Africa with some pockets of dirty areas. One of them would be my country, because of abilities to implement, maintain conformity assessment programs, which are recognized by Africa and also by the world. We have recently successfully accredited some scopes on management system certification, and the cost is not welcoming. The ABs are charging serious amount of money, and for us, that's a challenge. Now my question is, for ARSO and AfriMets, for countries like ours, so that we don't have some dirty patches in Africa in the future, are there intentions or programs that will help in terms of making sure we build the required capacity in order to ensure there is active conformity assessment programs and also active participation in these platforms? The support will be in the form of hand-holding, expert exchange programs, or even the differentiated membership fees, as you rightly mentioned, MSMEs within one country cannot afford, the set payment rates. So there's got to be some staggered kind of fee structure. Can we have the same for this platform so that the small economies like mine, which is one of the smallest, can afford and work with you, collaborate, cooperate in cleaning up Africa? Thank you so much.
Thank you, Tony. So maybe we start with Dr. Rotich, if you would like to answer for this question.
Thank you very much, my friend from Eswatini. Yeah, I just wanted to say that we've hosted several teams from your country, and I think that was one of the sensitization and capacity building program, and so it helps. I wanted to say this, picking up from what Kachai had said before about the SMEs, or the small-scale entrepreneurs who might not have a lot of money. So in the aspect of legal metrology, one of the things they do is type approval. So that will help you that with the little money you have, when you're buying an equipment, you are buying the right equipment. So that you don't have to buy and discover that it's not producing what is expected, because it's not the type that is required for that kind of production. So it helps so that you get it right from the beginning. Now, when it comes to at the metrology, at the BIBM, one of the things that an initiative that actually comes from Africa is to discuss the possibility of the fee structure so that we can be able to take care of developing economies from Africa. We're having a meeting in November, what you call the CGPM meeting, which is the meeting of the countries who are members. And that's to discuss that, to see whether, how can we accommodate those countries. But I also mentioned that there is provision to be what we call associate member. So the fees when you're an associate member is low. Now, the other thing that I always encourage people is this. When you talk about accreditation of your lab, remember accreditation is the final thing. But there's living like an accredited lab. Practicing, following the procedures, which I'm sure you can do it without a lot of cost, because it's just getting the standard and understanding it. So sometimes we get scared that accreditation is very expensive, but can you operate as a good laboratory practice? And then when you have the money, you do accreditation. But I think that one, Martin is going to talk about it. What we've done here in Kenya is to support the small-scale enterprises. We have more or less what we call subsidized certification fees. So if you are an SME, for example, you pay only 5,000 Kenyan shillings to get your product certified. The other thing we've done also is recognition of certificates from other accredited labs. So you don't have to put up your own lab if you are an SME, but have access to another lab which can test your products. And when we're talking about this recognition, and we're saying that let's have a good quality infrastructure in the continent, so that if I'm doing animal feeds, for example, and I buy my raw material from a neighboring country, then the certificate that accompanies that product is actually reliable, meaning what I'll produce will be a good product. But if the conformity assessment is not reliable, then it becomes a problem for you to achieve what you want. It means you have to go and do additional tests, trying to ensure your product meets the requirement of the market. So there's need to build a strong quality infrastructure. On the issue of cost, I can tell you, we always talk about something being expensive because we have not quantified the cost of not doing it. I just want to mention a discussion that we had with some group from SIM. My brother there knows about it. And there's this country which was exporting some, the iron ore and something like that. But they thought it was very expensive to set up their own infrastructure. But when they, after participating in this metrology and they had the calculations of how much they were losing because they were not measuring themselves, they were shocked and they invested heavily in their own quality infrastructure. So it's very important to have a discussion about the cost of what you are losing, not only the cost of what you are spending. Because the cost of what you are losing could be 100 times the cost of what you would spend. And so, as a sound economist, you'd rather spend money so that you reduce the cost of what you are losing. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think, Martin, you'd like to weigh in for the cost of accreditation and the cost of non-accreditation.
Yes, I think I like the question from Eswatini. It's Maseko. Yes, this is a fundamental question we also asked ourselves around 2004. What is it that we need to do to achieve that our products are not subject to double testing, inspection, and that's why KEMAS came into existence. At that point in time, we were importing accreditation from UK, Germany, and for some certification bodies from the US. So I would want to address the point from two perspectives. We were discussing about the projects. Projects have a start and an end date. In our experience, there's a fundamental flow, especially from the beneficiaries not anticipating the termination of the project. We have a classical case. We had funding to support a number of medical laboratories and our project under Center for Disease Control. So we had the laboratories taken through capacity building, replacement of equipment, getting references around what they would do. And then they came for accreditation. They met the requirements for accreditation. Then the end date arrived in the second year of the accreditation. What happened? And they were public sector laboratories. They could not comply with the requirements. They were not able to pay, even to sustain the fees, because there was no business model built in. So the fundamental challenge, I think, for largely within Africa, is laboratories that are being set up, especially laboratories, from a regulatory perspective. When they go for accreditation, they believe it's a one-off cost. Accreditation is very cheap. So in projects that are coming into your countries, my idea is when you get to the stage of getting ready for accreditation, you must have a business case or a business model to which you will, because you've gained accreditation. So what is the additional price for your services? So the pricing model that you need to be looked at is the first thing. And then also using that pricing model over a period of time as a project exits, and we now insist with some of the donors that they have to give us that the laboratory, by the time of the fourth cycle, are able to fund 50% of the cost of accreditation without having to rely on them. So they have to have a gradual 10, 15. So there's a contribution from them. It then goes into the books of accounts that they know there's a fee to be paid. If I give you the pricing model for Kenya, it's very cheap. The cost of accreditation from initial all the way is not more than, how to put it, $4,000 US. If we are using the resources within Kenya. The burden becomes the people will move and the expertise from a different region. And that is what is sustained over. So it is really, really subsidized significantly. I give you an example of a calibration laboratory. Let me give you the example of verification, a verification body, which is accredited. They undertake virtual weigh bridges so that to ensure that nobody, on behalf of the regulator, nobody carries excess weight on our roads, and we maintain a good infrastructure. The annual turnover is $120,000 US. What is that proportion to the cost that they pay us every year, which is $4,000, $5,000 US for the business they get? And it is an SME. So they're given one road. So there is a benefit that you gain from accreditation. What is the cost of not having accreditation? The classical case I just gave, we have to wait for results to come from an accredited lab in Tanzania to release honey to be exported. So we increase cost of access to market. If we send it there, they arrive, they are held until the testing is complete. We have the same case we had previously with horticulture in the year 2000, 2010, where each time shipment of horticulture, flowers, would arrive in Amsterdam, then they will be subject to the necessary test for minimum residue levels. And when they fail, the person who is exporting pays the cost of destruction. And we had incidences, and that's why we have Horticultural Development Corporation as a regulator within the market to ensure we don't have those incidences. So you are about to bring in US dollars to Kenya, and now you're spending Kenyan money to destroy the produce you've taken there, and at the end of the day, you're not able to pay the farmers down the chain. So I think that's what I would want perhaps put as practicalities. Think when we are doing these projects, think sustainability. That how will you and how are you going to uptake the cost? Because there's value in that mark. Thank you.
Thank you, Martin. I think you also mentioned previously the multi-economy accreditation bodies as one of the solutions also when you have different countries having one accreditation body. Yeah, so, Mr. Gashahi, Mr. Tony asked the question about ARSO, and I wanted to build on his question. So he's talking about the fees of membership, but is it not only the fees of membership, it's also the participation, going to a meeting, being part of working groups, participating to the different standards development. So all these things can have costs, and can these costs be reduced, for example, by online meetings, by other ways, by subsidizing? So how ARSO is tackling this problem?
Thank you. First of all, from the discussion from Martin and Rotich, I think for each member state, they have to make a strategic decision to follow and comply with the existing requirements that have been provided maybe by the various quality infrastructure institutions. Because, of course, through meetings, we are told it's about, especially for standards, it's about transparency, openness, all that. But in any meeting, it's an issue of interests. So if your interests are not taken care of, then you have to do that calculation that Dr. Rotich is saying. How much will you lose by not participating? Because maybe the people in that meeting might bring up some requirements that might in future kick you out of business. The other thing I would like to point out, so you have to make a decision, and the cost of not participating might be more than what you actually are saving. The other thing I wanted to say is at ARSO, first of all, membership fee, again, it depends on the various economies. Smaller economies pay fewer units for membership than bigger economies. So I wouldn't expect you to pay what Kenya is paying for membership because we have other small economies, even like Somalia, who have recently joined, and Chad. The other thing is that harmonization of standards. Sometimes we get projects from donors, and they help in harmonization of standards. You just need to express interest, and we have always been calling out expression of interest for experts through the contact member bodies. And you are paid, not paid actually, facilitated for, particularly like now that we are in digital age, we are having virtual meetings. You are given some little amount for your BADOS under that project. So you cannot complain that you cannot be able to participate. And once in a while, when those funds allow, there is also provision for a fully funded fiscal meeting so that you can come and maybe try to conclude some of the things that you have been discussing online. So there is really no reason whatsoever for not participating. There is no reason whatsoever for not participating in harmonization of standards in your interest, and also proposing for standards for harmonization so that you can be able to trade with other countries. In the harmonization of standards, we normally look at for acceptability of that standard, whether we can reference an international standard, a regional standard, and if they are not available, then even a national standard can be used as a basis for that harmonization. And instead of using money to harmonize standards at local level, you can use that money also to support your experts to participate in harmonization of that standard at African level by proposing that same standard you want to harmonize, to develop at local level for reference and development as a harmonized standard for acceptability across Africa. Then your products or services can now not only move within your country, but across the whole of Africa.
Perfect.
And then lastly, we also undertake some internship. Sometimes you can apply for internship, and you can have your staff accommodated at TASO for a few months to just undertake, to learn what goes on in terms of harmonization of standards.
Very clear, Mr. Gashai. I think the message that opportunities and solutions are there. Please take them and use that possibilities and those options to be effective and also to contribute to the development of your economy. Dr. Rotich, you wanted to add one point?
What I just want to say is I think what is very important is for the technocrats, the technical people, some who are seated here and some who are online. Make sure you engage the policymakers. Let them understand the roles you play. Let them understand what your organization does, especially from the economic perspective. And then the other one is this. We're having an online meeting. I'm sure if we count ourselves here, we have few. But there are many participants who are online. And I'm sure if you ask them, they have not paid even a cent. So take advantage of online meetings. I'm sure these days, any physical meeting has a provision for online. So don't say you cannot participate. Ask them to provide an online linkage so that you can be able to participate. Now, the issues of accreditation. Accreditation on what? It is not everything, isn't it? It is strategic. So you need to know what is it that you want so that you don't end up burdening yourself with things you don't need. So you have to be very strategic on what you are doing. Mr. Gashai mentioned about their priorities. I can tell you they have no priorities. It is your priorities. It is what you tell them, we need this, that they start prioritizing. So if you don't prioritize a standard that maybe you require, for example, it will not be in their list. And when they are seeking for support, you will miss out. But if you also put across your needs so that they are considered, so if there's some funding, then your job is done for you. So be on the lookout, engage with your policymakers, and always have your priorities on your fingertips, and most likely maybe on paper, so that if you are asked, you just remove it at least here. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Rotich. Great advice, I think, for all of us. And Martin, you wanted to add one point as well?
Maybe just to look at I think I did not respond because they're a very small economy. I'll give you an example of an island, Kiribati. Kiribati, I think, is close to being Eswatini, Lesotho, and the small economies within Africa. There has to be a deliberate decision to have the national quality policy, and the choices or the strategy to do is, should we invest in this portion, in this portion, in this portion? So you decide, and I said priorities, maybe we only require accredited testing facilities. For the certification bodies, we let the private sector play a role, or we let any certification body within the regional corporation, say SADC, to play that role. At the end of the day, the cost is always passed to somebody. And at the end of the day, the country is able to export maybe it's sugar, whatever produce you have a comparative advantage of. So Kiribati developed a national quality policy and developed a strategy that they will rely on accreditation from other Pacific countries, Australia. For this, they will only develop this portion. The others, if the market requires, anybody who is accredited can walk in and do it. And that opens the space for private sector to complement the role of government. Thank you.
Thank you, Martin. I think you see that the discussion brings solutions, and it's very important to have your priorities set and planned ahead, so that when there's an opportunity, you can get that into opportunity and support your economy. We have more questions coming, so.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Yusuf Sise from Sierra Leone. I have two questions, one to the ASO and the other to KINAS. First, to ASO. First of all, let me just say this. In my country, we have not yet reached the level of providing accreditation services. We don't have accreditation bodies for now. We have a standards institution which rolls more developing these standards. We have some testing laboratories and certification, management system certification. My question to ASO is, we know establishing conformity assessment bodies is expensive and very challenging for many African economies. Now, the question is, what has ASO done, or what are the future plans with respect to regional integration of conformity assessment bodies in Africa? And to KINAS, of course, we had the success stories of the KINAS. We don't have such a conformity body like that in Sierra Leone for now. And we know there are challenges when it comes to establishing an accreditation body. Of course, every component of the national quality infrastructure involves so much challenges. Including the provision of accreditation services. Now we have challenges like having access to skills, certain skills sets, training, financing for startup and sustainability, supporting infrastructure, as well as reinforcing government's policy and regulations. With all of this, would you please share some knowledge with this audience as to how you have been able to address these issues with respect to your current achievements?
Thank you, Yusuf. Thank you. So we start with Mr. Gashahi, so about how the regional integration of regional conformity assessment bodies is supported by ARSO.
Thank you. I would like to answer that question in this manner. First of all, is Sierra Leone, I can't remember, are you a member of ASO? Yes. Thank you. So ASO, I said from the beginning, is a membership organization. And therefore, we have presence in 41 countries in Africa. In Sierra Leone, your national standards body is ASO, because we coordinate. Where funds permit, we can be able to do some. But if you have no, maybe we can help in talking to those people who allocate budget. If you are able to facilitate such a meeting, we can bring top management of ASO to come and show them the benefit, not only of standards or even other bodies, and maybe even so that they are able to understand the reason why in their budgeting system they should try to budget for such a facility. So for us, maybe it's just now an issue of building capacity in terms of using our own experts, or even getting experts from elsewhere, like maybe even some of the experts maybe who are experts in that field. So really, it is expensive, but again, the country has to count what is the benefit and what are you gaining and what are you losing. Because if you, for instance, now you don't have, and you have to use conformity assessment bodies from your neighboring country, any expert that flows there, if it is Martin, for instance, you have to pay for his air ticket, for his accommodation. And that bill is going to come to you and going to the country. If you build that capacity within your country, the local traveling there, maybe you just need an Uber to go to that facility, and you do your job, and you finalize. So yes, it is expensive, but it is more expensive not to have it.
I think the point here is that building national capabilities is very important, so that you can rely on the local expertise, but also conformity assessment bodies, they have the responsibility to gather together and have associations of conformity assessment bodies. That's not only will help the data integration between conformity assessment bodies, but also the voice of conformity assessment bodies will be heard, not as individual CABs, but as association or as a group of conformity assessment bodies, which we see also in different regions around the world that can be encouraged and enhanced, so that conformity assessment bodies also can speak together with one voice, coordinate their work, and protect their business of conformity assessment. And the second part of the question, Martin, is about your experience and how can that be reflected in other economies.
Yeah, thank you very much, Yusuf. I want to start off because you mentioned about standards and maybe give a perspective. And I will go back, and that's why in accreditation we really advocate for the existence of a national quality policy, and then followed by an implementation strategy. And that's how it has triggered the successes that we have in some of the countries. We see Sudan now have an accreditation body and all that. In the year 2000, a developed country, Malta, did not have a capacity of expertise to formulate standards. What did they do? Because the national law required them to comply, to have some set of standards, they approached UK, the British Standard Institution, and they transposed as equivalent to national standards of Malta 36,000 standards by identifying the sectors in which they found to be high risk that the market required so that they could grow their economy. So again, it's policy deliberate. Today, Malta invested in other components of quality infrastructure: accreditation, conformity assessment, and managing the regulators. They have a standard body, yes, but they are not churning out the standards. We have the corporation like ARSO. This is where you access and build your collection. So Malta is not the only case. If you look at the CARICOM, they also have countries that are too small to have a standards body, so they only have a correspondence desk. As a deliberate for a period of time, let's see. In 10 years' time, we will see what is there a market failure by us using foreign accreditation bodies in the economy or using our sister country standards, and the cooperation around that is being built, because we know if we cooperate, we'll be able to compete. And it's not in converse. We don't need to compete to cooperate. And that is the spirit we should take as Africa. And I hold that as a good case. For example, we see how the Caribbean have done, East Asia, by cooperation to be able to compete and access and supply goods and services and trade. So I come to the case of how Kenya's grew. Accreditation in Kenya started from the perspective of measurement way back in 1984. The bigger challenge there was the National Meteorology Institute could not supply calibrations to the entire market. Then it evolved slowly. I think we ended up having at that point, between 84 and around 2000, some 16 calibration facilities under quasi-accreditation. Then the market failure came in terms of certification or management systems. So everybody could declare themselves, I am a certifier. So in 1995, then there was a deliberate intention to control what I call them what? Fake certificates. I come and give you ready-to-use management system. So the policy is fundamental to help the country identify these risks and mitigate them and propose deliberate solutions. So in 2004, that's when the deliberate intention for Kenya to set up KENAS came in. And you'll be very surprised that at that point in time, we did not want to have a national accreditation body. We actually wanted to have a regional accreditation body because Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania, we were receiving accreditation services from overseas. But in the negotiation as partner states, again, we went into the mood of we have to compete to be the first one to have one. And this is a spirit that we know. It's very friendly fire within Africa. And after 2 rounds of meetings to try and create a regional body, it was clear that we will need countries to create theirs, then we cooperate. So I hope that gives a perspective that the policy comes and then the strategy to implement and the choices to which you invest or ask for funding for projects or from donors from ARSO, from AFRAC, from AFRIMET, what can be supported, the international quality infrastructure, the development organization UNIDO, World Bank. That's how I would maybe suggest you look at it and deal with it in that way. Thank you.
Thank you, Martin. I think, Yusuf, the answer is clear. Let's cooperate together to be able to be more competitive. We take a couple of more questions. So we have there.
Okay, thank you. I am Dassalen from Ethiopia, specifically from Ethiopian Standard Institute. IS is a member of ISO in 39P member and 37O member. And as you know, a founder member of ARSO and also O member in CASCO. Having saying this one, as an African country, we need a powerful standard body that is ARSO, which is good at this level. But we do have questions specific to ARSO. Catalogs are available in the website. How we obtain the standard, the actual standard, are they purchased or the soft copy is available? If this so, I need a reply. The other one is currently more than half of African countries have signed African Continent Free Trade Area. I think this is critical for ARSO and the overall national quality. I think African quality infrastructure, it may be. So how ARSO is ready for this continental trading to meet all requirements, to done all conformities, and to regulate overall processes as an African country, as a continent. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So the question is first, how to purchase the standards from ARSO. So the guides are for free, but the standards, how to purchase them? Is there a platform or to purchase the standards? Should you go to the national standardization body or can you buy directly from ARSO? And the second question is ARSO ready for the AFC FTA?
Thank you very much. First of all, African standards, they are not ARSO standards. African standards are available to members for free. So you can get them, you can lie to us, you'll be able to, I will not be able to tell you how to access them, but you'll be able to access them for free. And that's why we are saying you can adopt them. Once they have been agreed, you can adopt them as your national standards. And we are also trying to come up with a project where once you have adopted those standards and you have a product certification scheme on the same, you can be allowed to use a NASO quality mark to append it alongside your national quality mark also. The other one was on are we ready? I would say we are ready, but of course there will always be room for improvement because we don't have all the standards that will be required to move goods and services across Africa and beyond. That is why the projects of standards harmonization is ongoing. So what we are doing is we prioritize because again standardization is an expensive activity or exercise, so that we ensure that the resources that are available are only used for those projects that are necessary. And therefore, in your own standardization strategies or priorities, then you can be able to see, as Ethiopia, for instance, now, we might need some standards on leather, textile. I know those are your main areas. So do we have African standards on the same? No. Are we proposing some standards? Then you can request ASO to develop those standards, get your experts from NSB and also industry to participate in that. At the end of the day, we will have an African standard that's applicable also to you and can be used for market access. So we are ready because we are moving towards that direction. And we know even in developed countries, they continue to develop or to harmonize standards. So we are on course. We are on course. So where you see some gaps, please propose some standards for harmonization, and then we will take them on board.
Exactly. So it's group work. We all work together for that purpose, and it's a continuous work. So things will develop based on the priorities and the strategies of the member states, so that this goes in the benefit of all the economies. We take maybe a last question, Warren. It's up to Warren to choose. we can take two more. Okay. We can take from lady here.
Thank you very much. I was getting scared. I was trying to say something. Okay, I am Chidima Ewuzie from Standards Organization of Nigeria, SON. It's quite a privilege for us to be here today and for me to meet the ASO chairperson and Martins on the high table. So it's important to us. Yes, please, I want to ask this question on harmonization of standards in tourism and related services. It's an area that I don't know what ASO is doing about it, but it's been long I got a letter from my organization because, you know, Nigeria is quite active in ASO activities. And till date, nothing has been done. And at the ISO level, I am aware that ISO TC 228 have published over 44 standards in that area, and 15 other projects are still ongoing. So I know it's an area that Africa gets a lot of resources from. So I believe it's of interest to Africa, tourism and related services. Secondly, I also want to find out, initially we were doing it, but at some point it's as if, I don't know, the regional harmonization activities. During our class, I observed that EAS standards are really active. They are being utilized, which is fantastic. In my own region, ECOWAS, we have standards that we've harmonized and we also adopt them, we are using them. But I discovered, I'm not sure it's as active or as coordinated as the EAS standards. Why I'm asking this question is that with this free trade agreement that is currently going on, I don't know how we'll feel if we move market from EA region to ECOWAS region and somehow you happen to have a hinge. I'm not saying is what is going to happen, but I'm just saying, yes, I heard what our chairperson said, that is of interest. You have to, participation in ASO activities, you need to prioritize and know, yes, it's of interest, but it's also a mutual beneficial activity. ASO has interest. Likewise, the countries that have that are members. So I am soliciting that we look at that area and see how we are brothers, we can assist each other, especially when it comes to ensuring that we remove the barriers to trade. Finally, I also want to find out what this net activity is all about. This net also has something called this net, yeah, on information technology. So the activities are not too clear. So I just want to use this opportunity to have a first-hand explain or knowledge of what it's all about. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So 3 questions. The first question is about services and tourism. Is there something very important is being developed at the international level? Is there some work done at the regional level? The second question is about the sub-regions. Are the standards of sub-regions more active at the regional level, or is it like because we see them more often in our discussions? And finally, the platform, this net information. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Nigeria, for bringing that one up. I would say that at ASO, there is a technical committee number 61 that is on sustainability and eco-labeling, and they have a project at the UNECA that is dealing with the sustainability standards. And there are 2 standards which have been prioritized. I might not have the details of how they were prioritized, but they are on tourism. And of course, I don't have the details. I don't know, but I think Nigeria is also represented. If it is not, again, a call has already been made. It is Nigeria who have not responded if they are not participating. Yes, yes.
We are members, of course we've been nominated. But now, sustainability in tourism standard. Sustainability is one aspect of it. There are other tourism, adventure tourism is there. There are about 13 different groups in tourism that activities are being carried out in Africa. The countries are relying on it, and even workers are being moved. Okay, trade is currently going on in that area. And when you even see the activities, when you're privileged to be among such people, you will know that our impact, they need us. Okay, our impact is not really felt the way we are supposed to work there in that area.
Okay, I'll get there. I'll get there, madam. Yeah, so the next question I would ask, because I don't have full details, of course, I'm looking at position. Standards have Nigeria requested for the development of the other standards you are talking about? If not, then maybe we might need to get, because there is a standards proposal form that you normally fill and then request for those standards. But again, you may have done it, I don't know, I don't have details. What I'm saying in principle is that prioritization of standards is received from members, they request, and then we constitute the technical committees that now deal with those standards. What I was private to was on the 2 standards on sustainability tourism, sustainable tourism, that are being already, some work is already done. There is a working group number 3, I think number 3 or 2 on TC61 that is already working on those tourism standards. So, first of all, I'll take note that there is that request. I'm also privy to the work that is being done at ISO on tourism. And we would request, if you have not requested, because standards are need-based. ISO does not propose standards itself. It comes from the members. So if I'll take note, there is that need which has come, but if Nigeria has not requested or any other country, we will require Nigeria now to officially propose the harmonization of those standards. I think we just leave it at that without going to more details, because I might not have more details and you might also not have more details. But what we do, we extend call for standards and experts through the ASO contact person in the member states. So maybe you might need to talk a bit to Fabian. Fabian, I think, is the one who normally deals with Nigeria. Yes.
Okay. Okay. So we have an addition to answer to your question, and then we can have further details.
But we can talk maybe, yeah. Yes, yes. Let's talk maybe during tea. During tea, yeah, yeah.
We need to do individual works with that area because
Yeah.
also the standards are
Sure.
we are needed there.
Yeah, I think that the message is clear
We shall talk.
Yeah.
And then I can take it up with the relevant officer who is handling that technical committee. Sorry? I know Fabian is the contact person.
No, she's not.
She okay. Okay.
That's good. So you're updated. I think the message is that if we want something to be developed at the regional, African regional, or at the international level, it has to be member-driven. So the organization should not be the ones to propose the subject. It will be the members that should go forward and say, we have a need in our economy, in 2 or 3 economies that we would like this to be established, and then the organization should follow, and then you follow that to work with it. So I just want to give Martin also an additional point he wants to add in this.
Yeah, it comes from 2 points. We talked about ACFTA, but also I want to take the context of how we are approaching, as an accreditation body, our role in standardization. Fundamentally, the approach we've taken is under ACFTA, each member state or partner state or country in Africa that are signed up should be aware that the WTO TBT agreement has been incorporated by reference. So that means by default, you subscribe to what the TBT agreement provisions that I think you must have been mentioned to, 5152, related to conformity assessments, and also the formulation of standards. So as KENAS, we are the largest user of conformity assessment standards because we base our accreditation on ISO IEC standard 17,000 series. I think we use at least 14 of them out of the 28 or 23 to input into the criteria that we apply or sub-criteria that supports any accreditation for the different schemes we have. So we made a choice that we shall always be present through our ISO member for Kenya, KEBS, to be at the table when we are revising a standard, when there are interpretation required, and work closely with ISO CASCO. So that's a partnership that we don't want to lose because, again, we are relying on TBT, and our work is to have an equivalence and acceptance of accreditation. So I come to the issue of standardization. Personally, as an African, my dream is to see one day that there are ARSO standards being adopted as international standards. So what I would want to encourage, and many of you are members of ARSO, to cooperate and then be able to move those standards from not only being traded for Africa, but also for the entire world. I think we have good examples we saw previous in ISO, for example, the clean cook stoves. And I think that is an effort you look at to take advantage and make ARSO help you reduce the participation cost for everybody going individually as a member of ISO and ARSO, but cooperate and say this one has to be led and then move some ARSO standards to international standards. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Martin. I think the second part of your question was also that there are 2 parts in Africa. So we have the sub-regions in Africa. So we have the EA standards, and we have also the ECOWAS standards. And then you're thinking about the future, if there will be some trade between the 2 regions. Would that be equivalent? Is there like some harmonization of the work at the sub-regions? And that's the question, right?
Now, activity is more on this side, okay? So what it means is that I'm not saying it's your responsibility to do this, but, you know, if you don't balance the bridge, it will have a way of, it's like you wearing fine clothes on this side and on this side you're not properly. So it's good there's ASO as the big brother needs to balance. Let me
Yeah,
use
so-
that. Let me borrow that. Needs to balance
Clear.
the
Is
two
it
activities
clear?
to be able to make it easier for the work of ASO.
Very clear. So ultimately, is a question about trade. After that, if the two parts are developing standards, are those standards in harmony? Will that facilitate trade in the future, or will we have some differences if we are working in one more than other?
They
Yeah.
waste more time trying to
Okay,
harmonize the standards.
let's listen to the answer.
Okay, in terms of wasting time, maybe what needs to be done if such a case is there is, first of all, the experts themselves that are dealing with the standard are taken through what we call the ASHAM, which is the African Standards Harmonization Model, that gives, that takes standardization as a project. It has to start at this time and end at this time. A committee draft has to take so many months, our public review so many months, all that. And if it exceeds that, then maybe you have to look at it so that it doesn't spend more time. So there are stages from the working draft, the committee draft, all the way up to public review until publication. And it should move within the given time frames. And members are supposed to comment at the right time so that you don't, in that way, the standard will not delay. Once it starts now, it should be end maximum 18 months. It should be able to be through that. So again, capacity building of the expert. And normally what I see is that anytime we constitute a new committee, we take the members through that harmonization model so that they know what is their expectation, what is the expectation of the technical committee leadership, that is the chairman, the convener if it's a working group, and the secretary, so that they are able to manage standards harmonization as a project, not just as an activity. So you start at this time, and you are supposed to finish at this time. Because again, limited resources available, and you have to deliver. So one of the most important activity of a new technical committee is to take them through that briefing of the expectations.
And we discussed this in the workshop, that it's important that you participate, and there are deadlines and times. You have to organize yourself, have your experts that are going to be participate in different fields, and also support from organizations to ask for experts. That's also very important, that ask you, please give us someone who knows this field and participate in time frames. That's very important to follow the process of the design and development of standards. So I think that the last question was about the DESNet, which is the platform, information platform, network of documentation, information system on standards, technical regulations, and related activities in Africa that was initiated by ARSO. So I think this platform is available for everyone to see documentation and to consult, right, from ARSO. Okay, thank you very much. We take maybe the last question. I think we take another lady because we took 3 men, and yes.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Ilham from Sudan, working for Sudanese Standard and Metrology Organization. Nice to hear from AfriMet their effort in solving challenges facing PT for testing laboratory in African region. But I think there is another alternative, very simple solution proposed by 17025 standard for the laboratory to conduct interlaboratory comparison. But I think also this option need an independent body to organize and manage protocol agreed between the 2 laboratories, especially in selection and preparation of protocol toward the QC sample. My question, can AfriMet help this issue as an alternative solution to solve the unavailability of PT. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So, Dr. Rotich, the question is mostly about, you mentioned proficiency testing, which is very good. That's one way to give to prove the competence of the laboratory, but also there are alternatives that are acceptable, 1725. Into laboratory comparison. Sometimes laboratories, they have issues to organize that, and even if they organize it, maybe there are issues on how they treat the data and how they can make their comparison in a partial way, but also according to 17043, that has some rules for the different statistics to be used and the way to be done. So the question is that can AfriMate or other sub-region organizations support laboratories in different economies to get together and have some inter-laboratory comparisons if proficiency testing is not available?
Thank you very much for the question. I think in my earlier presentation, I had mentioned the issue of PT providers. And I mentioned that South Africa already have a very good established scheme, which is accredited. As Kenya Bureau of Standards also, we are working on that. We are having a number of materials that we have developed, which we've done. We've done flour, and also we also have the EAC PTs, which are being done. And these ones we use expert labs to do the value assigning and preparation of the material, which can be shared. So I think as AfriMates, we have that framework for really ensuring that we have enough PTs. So maybe what you could do is to keep in touch and tell us the areas of challenges where you have, and so that when we are planning these PTs, we can see how you can be incorporated. So also the challenges, share with us so that we see how it can be handled. Yeah.
Thank you.
Of course, for the scientific metrology, the big challenge has been movement of an artifact, sometimes procurement of that artifact, which can be moved around, customs issues, which we are all trying to do. It's an issue that is being discussed even at the AfriMates level, how to facilitate the movement of those artifacts. So your request is something that can be handled. I can share with you my contacts, and then you can keep in touch.
Thank you, Dr. Rotich. I think this is a very good offer. I think we know all that it's not an easy thing to have artifacts moved for proficiency testing and calibration. It's also something that's expensive to have proficiency testing from outside, and not only for the price, but also sometimes the samples are not accepted in the border. So proficiency testing is an issue that we can recognize in our continent, and that it has its challenges. But I think with the existence of AfriMate, all the solutions that can be provided, this can be handled and made easier for our labs. The other point also that we discussed in the workshop, I think laboratories also, they need to be in the forefront, and then to have their network and to work together so that they can also organize themselves, these inter-laboratory comparisons, and we can use the resources from AfriMates for high quality proficiency testing and reference materials used for those proficiency testing. Thank you very much. I think with this, we arrived to the end of our session and discussion. It was very interesting. We would like to stay more, but I think it was very fruitful discussion. We see that the different components of the quality infrastructure in Africa, they are engaged to support you and to build a bright future for Africa, and also to support the African continent free trade agreements. And I think the message that we can take from this forum is that together we are stronger. Thank you very much in the room, and thank you very much online for following us. I'm looking forward for more discussions, and thank you very much for our honorable guests today for your input and all your support and information. Thank you very much.